main points today, there were 6 main headlines from today, but budgets these days are very funny. They used to be shrouded in mystery. Nobody knew what was going to be announced. These days, much more common to get lots of leaks before they actually start speaking. And we generally have a bit of an idea of what's going to happen. And today was no different. So often we find ourselves looking back at the previous statements and budgets to find out what's actually affecting us as of now. Today there was 6 or so headlines. The absolute grabber was the 1% cut in income tax rates. There was a statement that the national insurance thresholds will increase, the 5% cut in fuel duty, an adjustment to the Employers Allowance, which was increased, a range of measures focusing on investment in business and trying to encourage that, and then also some green measures too. So Rishi started by setting out a background of what he saw as the challenges, and I guess setting out why it was so difficult to provide help. We've obviously had the pandemic, we've had Brexit, we've had the net zero policy, and more recently the Ukraine war, all of which have put pressure on the public purse. Inflation, he told us, is at 6.2%. and fully expected to rise to nearly 7.5% before settling back down and being back under control in 2024, so they say. His focus was on fiscal sense and managing the economy properly, all the sort of things you'd expect him to say, and a focus on reducing the debt as a percentage of GDP. What we did learn today, however, was that next year's interest payments for the government will be some 83 billion, a staggering amount and almost double what it was in the previous year. That's actually more than we spend every year on defence spending, which is really hard to contemplate for context. So, not surprisingly, having set out all those challenges, he was keen to try to provide some solutions and then to tell us how he was going to help. So I'd like to focus first on the business side of it, and then I'll come on to the personal side. From a business point of view, I think probably the most significant was the expected fuel duty cut. Most of our supply chains have a huge impact from the increases that we've seen in recent weeks, and there will be a lot of commentary in the coming days that 5p is a drop in the ocean compared to the rises we've seen recently. But nevertheless, it should help. So for all of you, don't go to the pump before 6 o'clock, because apparently that's when it's changing. And it'll be interesting to see if it flows immediately through to pump prices. But as a business, even every supply probably somewhere is affected by transport costs. And certainly those of you buying lots of product will be seeing those cost increases and finding it a real challenge as to how you improve efficiencies within your business to retain your margins. And ultimately, sad to say, I think that's going to be in price rises for everybody and pushing those increases on through your own customer base, which is no doubt going to be a challenge. The Employers Allowance is one that some business owners will be less aware of. It's a claim that you have to make. You make it through your payroll, and it's available to all businesses that have a national insurance bill in the previous tax year of less than £100,000. You're able to claim £4,000 per year historically, and he's increased that to £5,000. And you do that by reducing your PAYE contributions. So this is one of those cases where you need to be in touch with your payroll department or your payroll outsourcing and make sure they're making that claim on your behalf, and that indeed they've made it for the previous tax years. I mentioned earlier there was a focus on investment. He clearly sees the way to the future and controlling inflation and spending as investment and growth, and therefore there were a number of measures advised today which should help that. He split it down into 3 categories: people, ideas, and capital. From a people point of view, there are lots of training grants available, and he highlighted Help to Grow, where there's a focus on digital and additional grants or assistance, pointing out that he felt we as a country don't spend as much on training as our compatriots across the world do. And therefore, that's something they're looking to increase to upskill the workforce and ultimately provide, I guess, efficiencies and better businesses, faster growing, which all helps in the longer term. As far as capital is concerned, a lot of our businesses, and particularly yours, will be considering investment in capital. It's a big decision, it's big ticket numbers, and tax relief can play a large part in that decision making, both in terms of timing, when you make those investments and if you make them. And he announced today that the annual investment allowance, which is that relief, will be extended. It's currently at the rate of £1 million a year and would have dropped down to 250. 250 does cover a lot of our business plan investments, but £1 million gives us that extra if we really want to go big in terms of seeing opportunity and the rising cost of capital equipment. He also referred to super deduction, a bit more of a woolly referral, and a promise that that's under review and being looked at in terms of probably an autumn budget statement, but implication that might be extended, and that's really valuable, which is where basically you get 130 pence for every pound spent on capital equipment as an equal and opposite deduction against your taxable profits. Then he talked about ideas, by which he means research and development, and again a focus on something he's going to look at, so no change immediately, but looking to extend the use of that and make it more viable for businesses. Research and development people tend to think as splitting the atom. It's certainly not that. Most of our business will have an element of research and development in them, and that's something I would urge you to talk to your accountants, or us here at Prime. We have specialist teams who look at that, and often if you can find research and development in your business, you can reduce your corporation tax bills substantially. So that's one to look out for. If you've got no profit to offset because your business has been struggling, like many have, then there's an opportunity to turn that relief into a cash payment. So still worth investigating. He also talked about business rate reductions, although those tend to be pointed towards the hospitality and retail industries that have been affected most by COVID. So some help there. So from a business point of view, not surprisingly, one of the things he didn't mention was the increase in corporation tax rates, tax on all of our business profits, which is due to rise in April, and we'll see rates rise from the historical 19% to a 25% margin, with marginal relief for profits between 50,000 and 250. So something we'll have to plan towards, and as I say, surprisingly not mentioned. Turning now to the personal side of things, which was something he was challenged before by most commentators to do something about the cost of living. We're all facing huge challenges. And again, the headline grabber, probably the national insurance increase. He's increased that threshold up to 12,000, just over 12,000 now, to equal the tax threshold. So anybody earning in those lower regions will pay no tax or national insurance whatsoever. That's great and will undoubtedly be of small help. However, again, we have to be conscious that that 12,000 rate is not moving. So as inflation grows, the 12,000 stays the same. We get what's called fiscal drag, which offsets to some extent the benefit of that change. What it is, however, is an opportunity for us as owner managers to look at the way we pay ourselves. Most of you will be advised, probably for tax efficiency, to take a small salary and to top up your income by way of dividend. And the change in the threshold will mean that there's likely a benefit to be gained from increasing your base salary, albeit relatively small. Definitely something worth looking at. He also mentioned, from a green point of view, the insulation and solar panels and the like, VAT changes to reduce that to 0% to make them cheaper. So that's, I don't think, going to see a huge investment in that area, but obviously wanting to encourage the green agenda. The 1% income tax headline will be offset because that does not take effect until 2024, which, funnily enough, coincides with towards the end of the Parliament. So some cynics will say that's one eye to the election and reinvestment. That covers the main points of today's budget. Clearly an attempt to increase investment for the longer term. It's likely that the lower middle classes will benefit most from that. There are some opportunities definitely to make savings for your business and some tax incentives if you want to invest. So please look out for those. You can always talk to us at Prime Accountants, and my details will come up at the end of the webinar. Thank you for listening, and I wish you and your businesses well.